It was the greatest loss of dragon life in a single day, and a tragedy of such scale that even the faith ceased their preaching for a time. It was not only the dragons who died that day, but the last breath of wonder, the last echo of the Age of Fire. Some days live in legend, others die in silence, too terrible to be remembered. But one day stands apart, a wound cut deep into the soul of the realm. A day when gods were dragged from the sky and slaughtered like beasts, when fire fell like rain, and a people damned themselves in pursuit of deliverance. I speak of the storming of the Dragonpit in the year 130 after Conquest. And if your heart does not break by the end, then you are not of this world. King's Landing was never so brittle as during Queen Rhaenyra Targaryen's reign. Her rule, born not in ceremony but in blood and betrayal, was crumbling even before she sat the Iron Throne. The dance of the dragons had shattered the realm's body, but in King's Landing it shattered its soul. Bread cost thrice its weight in silver. Rats were trapped and roasted in gutters. Hundreds starved in the streets. Children vanished. Septons prayed over corpses wrapped in burlap. And always, above it all, the stench of dragons lingered. The small folk no longer saw their rulers as divine. They saw them as tyrants, astride monsters who burned the fields and consumed the realm's future. "Let them starve," a merchant was heard to say. "So long as the dragons eat, the queen does not care." And perhaps she didn't, or perhaps she had simply lost the strength to. In the gutters of Flea Bottom, a voice rose, clad in rags, barefoot, with eyes afire, and a staff of weirwood in his hand. The man known only as the Shepherd began to preach. He spoke not in riddles, but in thunder. "The dragons are demons. Their riders, whores and kings alike, are the spawn of sin. Burn the beasts and cleanse the realm." He did not need banners. His flock was misery itself. Thousands gathered to hear him. Beggars, butchers, washerwomen, orphans, and cripples. Those who had nothing left turned to a madman for meaning. And Rhaenyra, haunted by her own paranoia, did nothing to silence him. The gods had abandoned King's Landing, and in their absence, the Shepherd became their mouth. High upon Rhaenys' hill, a monument to Targaryen power towered. The Dragonpit, an ancient domed hall large enough to hold giants, its blackened walls carved by Valyrian hands. Within it, 5 dragons waited in darkness. Dreamfire, old and majestic, once the pride of Rhaena Targaryen. Tyraxes, the young willful mount of Prince Joffrey Velaryon. Morgul, bound to Rhaenyra's daughter. Shrykos, a hatchling destined for a prince who would never ride. Stormcloud, unbonded and wild, held in chains for fear of chaos. Once they had ruled the skies. Now they were caged beneath stone, fed like cattle, feared like plague. They could smell the city's hate, and the people could hear their screams. What came next was madness, born from heartbreak. Prince Joffrey Velaryon, furious at his mother's descent into paranoia and the loss of his brother Lucerys, tried to take his dragon Tyraxes and fly from the city to aid the war effort. But Tyraxes, untrained for such haste, panicked. He rampaged through the city, snapping chains, setting fire to shops, maiming guards. The chaos ended only when the city watch cut the dragon down. They butchered him in the streets, a prince's dragon, and the people cheered. Fire and blood. That moment mattered. For the first time, the people had seen it done. A dragon slain, and the sky remained unbroken. The shepherd proclaimed it divine. One demon has fallen. The rest will burn. It is the will of the gods. The crowd roared. and something ancient inside them died. On the 22nd day of the 10th moon, the storm broke. A mob of more than 10,000 small folk, whipped into frenzy, surged up Rhaenys' hill with torches, pitchforks, butcher's hooks, and burning brands. No banners flew, no lords rode. This was not a revolt, it was a purge. Even babes in arms were among them, held aloft by mothers who screamed for vengeance. The gold cloaks did not stop them. Many joined. The mighty bronze gates of the Dragonpit, which had held back dragons for a century, gave way in less than an hour, and within, the gods waited. The Dragonpit was no longer a stable. It became a killing field. Shrykos, the smallest, was swarmed immediately. Her cries rang out, high and sharp. She roasted dozens in flame before the mob pinned her down with nets and tore her apart with axes. Morgul broke partially free, clawed up into the air, only to crash into the domed ceiling, breaking her back. One survivor claimed her final breath, shuddered like a hurricane through the bones of the pit. Tyraxes, wounded from his earlier escape, fought furiously, lashing his tail, crushing bodies, shrieking in pain. But he was bleeding badly. He collapsed beneath a tide of men, torn to pieces as he writhed. Then came Dreamfire. The dome trembled with her roar. She rose into the air on wings of pale blue fire and unleashed hell upon the crowd. She burned 200 men alive in the space of a heartbeat. Women with babes, boys barely old enough to hold a dagger, all turned to ash. She circled the vault again and again, ramming the ceiling, trying to escape. And then the dome cracked. The collapse was heard as far as the Dragon Gate. Stone and fire rained down, burying dragons and men alike. The screams that followed did not sound human. Stormcloud, wild and panicked, had nearly broken his chains, only to be dragged down as the dome fell upon him. When dawn came, the hill still smoked. 5 dragons were dead. So were over 4,000 small folk. It was the greatest loss of dragon life in a single day, and a tragedy of such scale that even the faith ceased their preaching for a time. The Dragonpit, once the jewel of the Targaryens, was a scorched ruin. The shepherd was never seen again. Some said he died beneath the dome. Others claimed he escaped, carried away by shadows. Queen Rhaenyra stared at the smoke rising from the hilltop and said nothing. She did not cry. She did not scream. Something inside her had broken, and it would never heal. Soon after, her reign ended in betrayal and despair. And for Westeros, the age of dragons ended not with a whisper, but with screams. It was not the dragons who burned the realm. It was men. Men with torches. Men with fear in their hearts. Men who, in slaying their gods, also slew their dreams. Quote, "The dragons died, but with them died the last great fire of magic in the world. When I walk the ruins of the Dragonpit, I still hear them. The wing beats, the roars, the crying of children, the prayers of fools. We wanted to be safe. But what is safety without wonder? We wanted to be free, but freedom paid for in fire leaves only ash. Remember this, we were given fire, and we chose darkness."